Hi, this is Ms. Piercy with the Module 5 video about creating instructions and also, of course, about Assignment 5. Now, you guys are probably already familiar with instructions or something that you've used in your lives. The main feature of instructions is that they explain the steps of a process. Instructions answer questions that readers have about how to do something. If readers didn't have questions about how to do something, they wouldn't need instructions, right? So instructions need to definitely explain the purpose behind the activity that's being described, what materials, equipment, supplies, or previous experience might be required before you get started. How do you begin? What goes next? And how to avoid the kinds of common pitfalls that might be associated with the particular procedure that you are discussing. Now, these pieces of information might take different physical forms, from a brief quick start guide that you get with a consumer electronic product, to an in-depth manual to operate a piece of heavy machinery, to a video posted on YouTube, to an online web page with links for different parts of instructions. There are a lot of ways that this information can be presented to the general public. And some of these particular physical forms have specific criteria associated with them. So we're going to focus more on the general criteria related to instructions, and specifically with a focus kind of more on written instructional media. Any kind of instructions, though, to be considered usable needs to begin with a clear and limiting title, something that makes it 100% obvious to the reader what is being described here. To write instructions, you have to already know how to do the thing you're discussing. So that's what we mean by informed content. You can't create instructions for something unless you yourself have done it many times. You know the common pitfalls, you know the best tricks for success, and you know everything that's required. Many instructions are benefited with visual elements, whether that's to illustrate what the item that you're creating should look like, whether that's to have a side-by-side view of the process so that the reader knows how to do it. The steps need to be organized in a chronological sequence, and you have to have the right level of detail for the specific task you're discussing and for the audience that's going to be performing this task. You'll want to use design features that are appropriate to instructional media, such as numbering, such as section heading, such as white space to separate certain elements. You'll want to have a readable writing style as well. The instructions use a specific form of writing. We use the command form of verbs. We use short sentences, not so short as to be telegraphic, but relatively short. And you may also need to include notes and hazard warnings, especially if there's anything that's at all dangerous about the process that you're describing. The key with instructions is that people don't want to read them once, much less have to read them over and over again. So it's very important that readers can understand instructional media the first time they read it, which means that you need to make sure, as the writer, you understand completely how to do the task. Make sure you know exactly how much information your audience needs and restrict yourself to that. Don't go over the top with extra information, because it'll make it harder for the reader to find the crucial information. Keep your steps short. Break things down. Make sure you're writing in the writing style we expect for instructional media, that direct address and command form of the verb, and make sure your document design features help the reader to find their way readily. A few comments about notes and hazard notices. A note is basically something that describes an option in instructions, maybe a variant way to do things, a different ingredient you might use, or just a tip, right? So that's sort of, at a pretty mundane level, and you can put that information just maybe right where the step is. A caution will help a person to avoid common pitfalls, which isn't necessarily as severe as injury or equipment damage, but could just mean that something goes wrong. You don't want to have to take something apart and redo it because you weren't warned, to make sure you look for something before you start. Or you need to be told, to stir the gravy constantly so it doesn't scorch. It won't ruin your life if the gravy scorches, but it will ruin your dinner. And then a danger notice is used in any instance where there is a danger to life and limb. These things might, some of them, be present at the beginning of instructional media, but they also might interrupt the chronology if it's important that a person knows at that moment about a particular risk that is involved. As a general rule, all instructions have some kind of introduction. Often that introduction is very brief, but if there is an introduction, it's going to contain this kind of information, just that general background, what this is for, what do you need to know going in, what materials, ingredients, equipment do you need to have, and if there are any definitions that are kind of important to put out there at the beginning, this is where you'll put them out, as well as any general warnings for certain tasks. You don't want to go overboard because people want to get started. Each step could be pretty self-contained, but some complex instructions may have sub-steps, but essentially steps are presented in a chronological order, and they just tell you what to do at that point in time with whatever you need to do it with. An instruction should have at least some kind of conclusion that lets you know what you will have once you finish the process, whether that, is a finished product, a finished recipe, or, successfully curled hair, whatever it may be. And if there are any, troubleshooting kind of things that might be involved, this is where you would offer that information. Online documentation can often present this sort of information via hyperlink, which is really useful, and can offer additional things like videos and interactive components, as well as helping different learning styles. I watch a lot of YouTube videos to do home repair and improvement. It's great for that kind of thing, but for other kinds of things, say recipes, I'd rather have a written recipe than watch a video. So that's related to my personal differences and learning preferences. And these days, a lot of instructional media offers multiple ways of reaching the user. In assignment 5, I'm going to be asking you to work with some instructions that I'm giving you. Of course, you'll want to be sure to read the reading assignment for this module, as well as read the full instructions for assignment 5 before you begin. This assignment, like some of our past ones, also has 2 parts. The first part is going to ask you to write a memo addressed to me, who's supposed to be your boss in this case, where you're analyzing some instructions that have some problems. And so you're going to use a checklist that I've provided in the module to identify the strong points and weak points about what to do before jacking up your car. And that information, that analysis, will be in your memo. On another page, a separate page from your memo, you're going to rewrite the instructions. You're going to use what you know about creating effective instructions to redo these instructions so that they will now meet the usability criteria better. And I need both of these elements to be in one file, so one page will be your memo and one page will be your revised instructions. And you want to make sure that if you recommend some changes in your memo, that you implement those changes in your revised instructions. The criteria for this assignment's grading are that you use correct memo format. So again, if you've had any problems with that or any comments on your previous assignments that use memo format, be sure you fix any of those problems this time around. Make sure that your memo has a logical organization and an attractive design, maybe section headings, maybe bullet point lists, as well as, of course, using appropriate document design features in your instructions. Your critique in your memo should be accurate based on the checklist I've given you. So use that checklist, run down it. Don't just give your personal opinion, give a thorough analysis based on the checklist. Make sure your revised instructions improves on the weak points that were in the original and keeps anything that you identified as effective or a strength. You'll also want to make sure that your revised instructions align with your critique. Make sure your revised instructions also meet the criteria for usability. You can use that checklist on your own revision. And of course, edit and proofread both your memo and your revised instructions for proper grammar and mechanics, as well as just generally speaking, good writing. This week there is another quiz, so you'll want to be sure you don't forget about that. Make sure you do the reading assignments before you tackle the quiz. And as always, if you have any questions about Assignment 5 or about anything from this week's video or this week's module, be sure to post to the questions discussion forum and let me know. We've only got 2 modules left, so I'll catch you next time in Module 6. Bye-bye.